Do you like to binge watch TV? Did you know you could binge listen to podcasts? Head over to electronicmediacollective.com, where they have podcasts for days. You like podcasts about wrestling? They have that. Do you like podcasts about TV and film? They have that. Do you like podcasts about horror? EMC has that too. Do you like comedy? Do you like books? Guess what? They've got you covered. Head over to electronicmediacollective.com. Pick your favorite podcast today.
This is a warning to all living mortals. Moose will release 13 of the most terrifying interviews of horror unto the world.
Welcome back, Horror Hounds, to another installment of the 13 Horrifying Days of Christmas. I'm your host and gift giver, Moose, and today we're going to dive into the world of murder, mystery, games, little of this, little of that, and here to talk about his newest film and maybe a little bit about Terrifier. Return guest and very, very good friend from Fuzz and the Legends Productions, Mr. Michael Leavy.
How are you? I'm happy to be back. I'm happy to be on Moose. It's exciting, and now we can talk about some of the stuff we couldn't talk about in the past and really dive. I'm excited.
Yeah, I was I've watched the movie Stream. I've watched twice now. And I was watching it again last night, and I was like, so many questions. And my wife goes, well, now you can ask them. I was like, no, I know. I've been waiting a fucking year to ask them.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. You know how hard it is for on this side of it, too, where you want to talk about it, you want to dive in, you can't. Or like, you're trying to make a point, and you really, you can't do that either. It gets frustrating. So I'm excited that we're actually able to speak on it all.
Like, yeah, I want to dive into the movie, but I don't want to, give away too many spoilers because, it's still fresh.
It is very. And there's still some countries and stuff that haven't seen it. And obviously, we just went to streaming recently, but now we were only purchased. Now we're rental. So there's a lot more people that were waiting for that, and physical media is still not out. So I understand. So we'll definitely, get into it, but also curb it so we're not spoiling anything.
I say we definitely have to weave a fine line with this, but oh my god, there's so much to unpack with Stream alone. But you were also part of Terrifier 3 this year. I mean, 2 huge blockbuster horror films this year. Come on.
Keeping busy, and we also have to do a quick plug. We have Screamboat coming out next year. And that's more of a comedy horror. It's satire in a way. I don't think people are expecting what that's going to be. It's something totally different. It's got the gore, obviously. When we're involved, it's going to have that. But it's something really different from Terrifier and Stream. They're kind of in the same vein to an extent, where Screamboat is something totally, on its flip side, totally different. So I'm excited to see what people think about that. Took some risks and had some fun. But yeah, we've been working really hard the last couple of years on obviously the Terrifier franchise in general, and also Stream, the writing process, getting the money to do it, shooting it, COVID getting in between, reshoots and pickups and things like that, editing, even though it's a very practical kind of effects-driven movie, there's also a fair amount of CGI that had to be done because of the screens that are in the film. We had to put a lot of work into the internet stuff, so that obviously takes a lot of time. I hate fake blood, so everything there is all real. Everything with the kills is all real, practical, 80s style, really make it. But then obviously when you're dealing with the techie stuff, that's where, we had to have the help of CGI because it just wasn't possible to build out all the websites and stuff when we were shooting it.
Well, yeah, let's dive into it. Who cut together the that opening sequence? It's that opening video montage where it's kind of glitchy. And, who's working on that?
The guy who did that his name is Matt Provenzano. He's somebody we've worked with for many years. If anybody he's in Terrifier 2 is a background actor. We've worked with him a lot. He's a really talented filmmaker. He actually did the credits as well for the end credits for Terrifier 3. He did the end credits for Stream and the opening credits for Stream. He's doing some stuff for Screamboat. So I've been working with Matt for a really long time, really great friend, local guy. And we had this idea of, it's weird how it evolved because there was a lot of people in the beginning that were trying to figure out what this opening was going to be. I'm a huge fan of opening title sequences to really set you in the mood. Halloween, that kind of style where you get the music, you settle in, you get a little bit of what this movie's going to be about. You really set the tone. You know, and originally the idea was to kind of fly through the dark web, but it's like, what does that mean? Like, what is the dark web? It's just whatever, you know, is it, you know, binary numbers? Is it streaming lights? And every time we did it, it was just, it looked like a Windows movie screensaver or whatever, those Windows screensavers. It just looked really cheap and cheesy, and it wasn't working. And then myself and some of my partners, Steve Delasala and my brother Jason, came up with, well, what if it's kind of this glitchy back and forth between kind of this dark webby feel, but not too heavy where like you're flying through like a screensaver, but you're kind of having the family footage glitching in and out as they're growing up with the place you're going to go, and like where, you know, this hotel and kind of this John Carpenter empty hotel shots as all the security cameras are being set up, and kind of intercut and have that technology kind of keep shoving its way into this family that ultimately is going to end up there. So that's kind of the birth of the idea. And there was just so much even on the surface of what it means, but then even underneath, like tonally, of like what, you know, that kind of establishes and all these things. And it really set our world up nicely. And then Matt executed it, I think, perfectly, and really creates an interesting opening and set up to our world, I think.
No, absolutely. Like from the start, it pulls you in, and hearing you describe your vision of the intro totally makes sense, because like I'm watching it, and the vibe I got was like, okay, like super surveillance camera, and they're like watching the family. Mm-hmm. You know, and knowing that, okay, you know, essentially this is, you know, their people are going to be picked more or less to be part of this system. It felt kind of like they were picking their contestant, as it were. So, and
there's a lot that could be explained too if we get lucky enough to get sequels of how that process works. And you know, and it was that voyeuristic approach, but a modern voyeuristic approach, you know, not like Rear Window where it's a guy with binoculars across the way. This was technology. Like, you don't know if you're being watched. You don't know how you're being watched. Is your Alexa listening to you, and all of those things, you know, that everyone makes jokes about. But it's kind of weird. You know, I talk about a certain product and then all of a sudden there it is
on your phone. Yeah.
Like really bizarre. So there's a lot of those things that we like lightly touched upon in stream that have a deeper meaning that we're hopefully going to be able to dive into more and more as we get to do sequels, if we're fortunate enough. So yeah, you're definitely hitting the nail on the head with your analogy of it all.
So when you set out to do stream, did you have any of the cast in mind, or was it you had your story and then it was, let's go find the cast? Like, did you build any of the characters to a specific actor or actress?
No, not really. There's obviously a wish list you have in mind to an extent. You try not to write to a certain cast, because if you don't get that person, and I've done this before, it's really, disheartening, and it's upsetting if you don't get that person because you've been envisioning this for years as you're writing it. And then, so I try not to. I don't want to say that it doesn't always happen, because with stream, there were people that we had in mind. For example, Jeffrey Combs was somebody that we had in mind for Lockwood. We had like a 1A and 1AB or, something like that, like two people that we really liked. And Jeffrey was definitely at the top of the list for that. But everybody else, I think, other than him, maybe Tim Reed, because I had met Tim doing the Stephen King's It documentary. So he was somebody that I wanted to have involved with it. We didn't specifically write the character to him, but he was somebody that we cast very early on because the character was written. And then, I was like, oh, he'd be perfect for it. And we offered it to him. But everybody else, it was just kind of like write the characters, see where it goes. Originally when this was set out, it wasn't about, it ended up being this kind of who's who in the horror world of it being in this film. It wasn't meant to be that at all. It was just we were just writing a story. And fortunately, a lot of these people fit those roles. With Danielle Harris, she came about because she's the perfect age. And, she's never done a role like this. And I was like, oh, this would be cool to kind of see her not be the young final girl, fight back, kind of thing. still has some cool shit, but like give her something where she's a new mom in real life. So that's also why she wanted to do the film. She's like, I've never got to play a mom. And it's kind of like that almost passing the torch, seeing her horror career, it arc. So that was really cool and how that came together. But, it wasn't specifically that way. Everybody kind of fit, the roles that we were looking for. And I also think being horror fans, you can't help but say, oh, Felissa Rose would be really cool in this part. So that's really how it unfolded. And I'm happy that it did unfold that way, because I think that's a really cool part of the movie that makes it fun, that horror fans, you can be a fan of the horror world and love it and enjoy it with who pops up. But at the same token, if you're not a fan of or don't know these people, you can still enjoy the film because they're just characters in the movie. They play it straight. They play it how they're supposed to play it. That just kind of makes it a little bit of a better experience for true horror fans if they get it. But, you don't have to.
Oh, yeah. Like, as far as being a horror fan goes, I mean, there's plenty of, like, horror-related Easter eggs with the who's who of horror. I mean, just off the bat, Mark Holton shows up, Oswald. And, I mean, he's playing Ozzy. I mean, come on. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, and I was a huge fan of Leprechaun growing up. He was a character that we curtailed a little bit because, again, he was written as this generic maintenance guy. But then once Mark got the role, I was like, oh, we can have some fun with this as, again, being a horror fan. And again, Stream is just a fun movie. It's one of those films that, like, you can really have a good time with. It has a lot of peaks and valleys, and it's kind of like a roller coaster of emotion. So it's a movie you can do that kind of stuff with. And I said, Leprechaun's one of my favorite movies. Why I got into horror. How cool would it be if we named him Ozzy? And he was all for that. And we had some little Easter eggs with his roles, with his dialogue. Some things he said were similar to what Ozzy had said. Even Teen Wolf, there's some references there. And even I'll tell you this, no one has noticed this yet. I don't even know if I mentioned it yet. It's not really a spoiler, so I'm not going to go too far into it, but it's a little bit of a spoiler. But there's a scene with Danielle Harris where she's sitting in a chair and she ends up stabbing one of the players. And that's all I'll say, spoiler-wise. But she stabs the players in the mask with a pen. And that was an homage to Halloween 1978. Jamie Lee Curtis, Michael Myers, comes over the back of the chair and she stabs him with the sewing needle. Now, what was cool about that, anybody who knows, Danielle Harris played Jamie Lee Curtis's daughter, Jamie Lloyd, in the earlier Halloween movies. So we thought on the spot, that was not written, that would be something cool. Whereas, with Jamie Lee, the night that the sewing needle pierces the rubber mask and goes into the skin of Michael Myers, whereas this, it kind of just bounces off, and it was almost like, new horror, new technology. Mm-hmm. Our masks are hard carbon fiber. One of them's actually sitting here, and it bounces right off. So it was kind of like a fun little thing to include. So there's like little things like that aren't as noticeable as well that are in the film. There's a ton of Stephen King's It references. Up to the very end. Yeah, up to the very, very end. And, we had fun too, kind of trying to weave those things into the movie, but without being too distracting, just kind of being like, oh, that's cool kind of thing.
Walks that fine line of Easter egg and homage and fan service. Because I'm a huge fan of fan service, but, sometimes it can be overdone. And on the surface, you look at everyone who's in this, it could have easily been just fan service. But you guys nailed it with just the right amount of here's Easter eggy stuff, here's some homages. These guys are playing completely different characters. Because, just off the bat, watching Danielle play her role, it's like, this isn't a standard Danielle Harris role. You get to see her fight. Cool. You expect that. But outside of that, no, she's a young Dee Wallace at this point, who is also in the movie. So, it's really fun to, kind of see all that together. I do want to step back for a second. The mask. So that looks like, I call it like the standard like a raver mask. Why that mask? Like, what was
behind it? So, a few things. One was obviously to keep things fresh from your standard 80s, 70s slasher. Was most of the time the faces were white, right? So already we knew we were going with a darker color. Originally, we wanted the mask to be made out of a cell phone screen. But you see that reflection? We knew it would be a nightmare to film.
I say a shooting that would suck.
Right, there'd be cameras and lighting, and we knew that would be really difficult. So then we went with carbon fiber, because that was the next kind of thing of like, okay, this is more modern feeling. This is more, technologically based. And then also a lot of things was, most of the time, Michael Myers, mouth's closed. Jason Voorhees, there is no mouth. Hush, the mouth's closed. Like there was, a lot of these killers that had these mouth closed. So we went with the open smile. And, it was, again, do the opposite of kind of what's been done. And then also a lot of times they hide the eyes. And we felt with our killers, we wanted to see their eyes. And it was really video game based, where we decided to light them up. And the colors of the killers, it's blue, green, yellow, and red, which is the multicolor, for PlayStation, Xbox, all of those video games. So we went with that. And that's kind of the initial process of how we were deciding to create these masks. And it took a little bit of time, because again, we're trying to do something that feels right and familiar in a way, but then also totally different and fresh and new. And, and that's a fine line. This whole movie's a very fine line of like the balancing act of keeping it fresh, but also, keeping it in line with what you want, what you expect. So that was really, I guess, the birth of it. And there was a lot of different iterations of how this was going to work out. And we ended up settling on something that I like how they look. Even it's funny because we've been compared slightly to, those are a little bit even purgy looking. And the director of The Purge actually is a friend of mine now, and he loves Stream. Gave us a really great review on it as well. And he loves the masks. He's like, oh, they're so cool. I've never seen anything like them. That's funny. So that was cool. But it just organically came together with some of those little notes as we were developing it through the years.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I think it's definitely going to fall into one of those like iconic looks. Because, in, I'd say 80s to mid 90s, you had, like you said, that cheap plastic white mask where is almost like a mime-ish look. Maybe had some blush on the sides, a little bit of lipstick. Kind of might be a doll face, but pretty standard mask. This is, I think, has the potential to be the next evolution of that. And it fits in the more modern, more digital, more computer-based world. And
it's got a very video game feel to it.
Yeah, so there's also, like, I think a lot more you could do with it and make it more interactive with the killers as well.
Yeah, and that's what I liked about, like, if anybody who's seen the film or will see the film, there are 4 killers in the movie, but they all wear the same exact mask. But what's cool is they're able to customize them to fit their personality. So, and that's something that's really unique too, whereas like, the girl puts on lipstick and she kind of looks like Harley Quinn, and that's what I thought was cool, that like we opened up a world where you have this base mask, but you can differentiate the killers based on their personality with what they decide to do to the mask.
Like you said, I mean, these 4 killers, very different personalities, very different killing styles, different, I would almost say from 4 very different walks of life. Killer 1's a little bit more, I'd say a little bit more Ted Bundy-ish. 4 is, falls a little bit more under like, the Leatherface and the bigger like serial killers, because he is the bigger guy. And then there's 2 and 3. And these 2, oh my God, probably my favorite. And has nothing to do with who played player 2. That's a completely side story. But just the shenanigans that they get into while they're doing this, it is fun, it's whimsical, and it's comedic murder, and it's fun to watch. And then, you realize, David Howard Thornton, Art the Clown, is playing killer number 2. And you start to see it a little bit with just his, like, ballet-esque mannerisms, and he's just like the way the 2 of them work together is phenomenal. Yeah,
and it was cool to see them play off each other as well, because again, in most horror movies, if there's two killers, you don't know there's two killers. You're playing one, kind of like how Ghostface was, right? And it's very rare that that happens. So we had a really cool opportunity to have these two kind of on a team playing off one another, and to see that dynamic you don't usually see. And yeah, and having David a part of it just added to that element. You know, like this character, like we talked before, was built already. He was going to be this kind of more fun, playful, jokey kill kind of thing. And then obviously David just fit right into what he was going to be. And then also, you know, brought his own element to it. He added to it. We call player two a little bit more of a flamboyant Art the Clown, you know, whereas Art the Clown is a clown and very mimish, I guess. Player two is more of like a ballet dancer, or, you know, very fluid with his motions, whereas Art was a little bit stoic with the motion. So there are slight differences in how he approached the character. But it was really fun getting to see all of those players come to life, you know, whereas it's almost like Joker and Harley Quinn in a way, you know, beyond even how player three looks. But there's a lot of that. And, you know, maybe he's more in line with your Arthur Clown or your Freddy Krueger, where he's a little more animated, whereas like player one, you said, is more like a Bundy or a Michael Myers, more of that stoic stalker. And then you have your Brute, which is, you know, Leatherface, Jason, Bane, these big bird guys. So yeah, there was a very intentional kind of differentiation of like tropes and types, but then also, okay, how do we take that and then flip it on its side and make it its own?
What we find out, and this is what makes the different killer types that much more interesting, is we find out this whole movie is a game. And so these killers or players, it's really fun to just look at, because yeah, it's you really run the gamut of, like, you know, like you would choose your player. You know, who you banking on here? You know, are you more of the Brute? Are you more of the, you know, stalking guy? Are you more of the, you know, just wild, crazy, go murder everybody type, have fun with it? You know, so watching it from that side as well is like, you know, this is, you know, it, and I realize, you know, how a lot of this is intentional, but just watching it play out, it's like, this is really fucking smart. So it just, I can't say enough how much I love this movie. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you. That means the world, and it's finding its audience, which is great. A lot of people are digging it and getting what we were looking to do, and which is awesome, you know, because you never know how it's going to turn out. When you make something, you throw it to the world, and it's cool to see people like yourself and really, you know, I've seen so many messages that this is their favorite movie of 2024 and how much fun they had with it. And I'm like, that's so humbling and just really encouraging, especially, you know, to be able to get those sequels, because, you know, franchises and sequels, they don't just happen on their own. There needs to be an audience, and it's people like yourself and other fans and supporters spreading the word, telling people about the film. So that's how you build momentum, and that's how you're able to do it. So we can get our investors back their money so they'll come again and do it with us, you know?
Absolutely.
And that's also what was, you know, again, it was that fine kind of tightrope that we were balancing of, like, the beginning of Stream is very much a mystery in a way. It's a slow burn. And it kind of plays out like, okay, little reveal, little reveal, little reveal. And then boom, you realize you're in this movie and it takes off, you're in this game and it takes off like a rocket. And then eventually you learn the scope of everything. But, you know, I'm excited to see where that can go for future installments, to where we don't have to necessarily set it up as long, because now the audience is keen and they understand exactly what's going on. And you can kind of have some fun right from the rip, you know, in what's happening in the film. So there's some really cool things and ideas that we have. Again, if we get fortunate enough to do it.
Like, if I had to describe this movie to somebody from just movies that people know, it would be Saw meets House on Haunted Hill, and they blended together beautifully. Because you have that, the guests come, you have the guests come over, and they, you know, they're in for the night. And that's that, and then they all start getting offed one by one, and then obviously Saw with the murder, the extent of the murders, and the whole let's play a game aspect. But unlike Saw, this is, you know, and I mentioned this beforehand, this is a movie that now, with, assuming you have the backers and everything, can go in essentially in perpetuity, because it's not required to have anything from the previous movie to make a sequel. It's not something you see a lot of in the horror world, where you can just, like, all right, here's a movie. Now it's set up to do a sequel, but we absolutely don't have to have any reference to the first one, aside from, hey, well, like in this one, Tim Reed's character mentions that something similar happened in, what was it, L.A.?
Yeah, an apartment building in L.A.
Yeah. And that's all that has to happen in another one to just tie into the previous one, other than it's all in the same universe.
Yeah, and that's what intrigued me the most when we were coming up with the concept, because this is a movie that really is concept is king, where you're right. This can go off in any different direction. This is what's also, I think, will keep it from getting stale and keeping it fresh. You can always introduce new characters. You can always introduce new locations. And that was something, again, that really piqued my interest in something like this. And that you create this world and you play within the world, but how you go within the world doesn't need to affect one another, which is really cool. It can if you want it to, but it doesn't have to. And, most of the time it probably shouldn't because that's kind of the scale of it all. And that's something that I'm excited to, dive into if we're able to do this, because, again, there's so many different personalities, so many different Lockwoods, so to speak, that can, coordinate these games, and they can go off in all their different directions. And if you do something that it doesn't have to affect what came before or what came after. And that's what's cool. You can kind of keep resetting as you go. And that's what's exciting most to me, because again, you don't get that too often, whereas it's really the game is the main character, the looks of the players, but you can have all different people and these player masks and stuff. And it's just the rules that go forward, the game itself changes. And, we kind of showcase that a little bit where you see in the end that another one is being set up. And then also you see another one totally separate that's happening, in the mid credits. So you get to see like, oh, wow, this really can go in many different directions and with many different people. And you can kind of see the different styles that we can go in.
I'm saying it can be happening multiple places at multiple times. And it's just,
yep.
I was curious, the concept of the Lockwood character and the just the whole concept of let's lock everybody in just one location. Was that at all inspired by H.H. Holmes?
It wasn't, but I could see where that, why you're saying that. It wasn't, though. It was just, I'll tell you, it all started where before it was about streaming, before it was about the game, any of that, Lockwoods, we wanted to do a horror movie that was in one location. That was the start of it all. That was like the beginning. Like, okay, let's do something where it's in one location and it's over one night. And now you have your constraint, you have your restrictions, and then kind of build it from there. The Lockwood idea was just naturally as it became a game, it was, you need a pit boss and you need someone kind of tallying up and controlling and, all of that, overseeing it, so to speak. And that kind of just naturally happened. But something that happened, I guess, as the cast fell in, this is something totally different, was I thought it would be a really cool idea, especially after we got Jeffrey Combs, was to have a different horror icon that's known in the horror world to be a Lockwood and to control the game. Because I thought that would be fan service, that would be fun. But again, they could be their own kind of sadistic, character. And they don't have to be reliant on what they've done before. Just the fact that they're there is enough. And then they could kind of do whatever we decide to do to keep it fresh. And that's kind of how the birth of all that happened.
Well, and that led me to... prior to his untimely passing, were there plans, if there was a sequel, would Tony Todd be the Lockwood in the sequel? Yeah,
so Tony, unfortunately, he was attached to the sequel. We had Tony, if it was going to happen, he was attached, and he was really excited to do it and looking forward to it. We would talk and discuss. Like I said, we have plans. We know where it's going. We would bounce ideas and certain things that we were going to do. We have some stuff. I'll say this. I don't want to give too much away on it, but we had known this could happen because we understood that he was ill. And so we had contingency plans if this was to unfortunately happen, which it did. So we were prepared, in a way. Obviously, we had like plan A and plan B, and both plans do include Tony, which is nice. And we'll make sure that if this happens, there'll be a nice tribute to him, and fans will be satisfied. I mean, to the best that they can be, because obviously he's not around to do more of what we wanted to do. But again, we do have plans in place. We did have plans in place. He was attached for the sequel, and we're now working through through the best options of it.
That's good to hear. Like, so I knew he was in the movie. My wife didn't. You know, she didn't look at the cast or anything like that. And, you know, we're getting up, and I'm like, I know he's in this damn movie. Where the hell is he? And then he starts talking. And she geeks out. She's like, I know that voice. I'm like, yep, damn.
Yeah, it's funny. My brother James, who's not in the film business at all, he was so hyped. Like, he didn't really look, you know, he knew I was doing the movie stream, but he doesn't like to look into my stuff until he sees it. You know what I mean? He tries to be a real critic and, you know, kind of take it in for what it is, because you know, there's so many people, like my other brother's so attached to it, and like we're working it. So he likes to be kind of like a, you know, see it for the first time and see it fresh. So we're in the theaters, and that scene comes on. Tony starts talking. He goes, Mike, he goes, the way you ended stream, I was so amped for the next one. And he goes, and with Tony, and he's like, I'm so psyched. And he just kept talking about Tony, how much he can't wait to see this whole thing play out. He's like, that was a perfect choice, all of these things. And then when what happened with Tony, he was like one of the first people to call me the next day, devastated. And it's funny, he's not even like this real horror fan like that, you know what I mean? But he was like so gutted and so upset. He's like, nah, what are you going to do? So I had to calm him down and tell him, you know, we do have the plans in place. And, you know, he's like, did you know? I said, yeah, I knew. And we knew it was going to happen. I didn't expect it to happen when it happened, obviously, or, you know, that quickly. You know, we knew it was a thing, but we were trying to, you know, streamline it through a lot quicker than what ultimately ended up happening. That was a shock. But, you know, he was at least happy to know that we had a plan in place. And again, we're gonna do him justice. We're going to pay out tribute. We're going to pay honor to him in the best way that we can, to where fans will be super stoked. I just worked with him on another movie, too, that's coming out called Pitchfork Retreat. And he's got a great, juicy, meaty role in that. You're going to love it. And Tony was it was last summer we worked with him on that. So that'll be a fun one. That's coming out soon, probably middle of next year. So there's still a lot more of great performances that Tony has blessed us with and left us with to carry his legacy on.
So yeah, his upcoming list was pretty long on IMDb. That was
yeah, which is cool. He was working like an animal, you know, the last couple of years through everything, and you know, and that's a testament to him. You know what I mean? To continue to work and to still have more stuff to come out and excite the fans.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, and this is a guy whose, you know, legacy will live almost forever. You know, I mean, Candyman, The Crow, just everything he's done, it attracts new and younger audiences all the time. So he will continue to have fans. People will continue to watch him, and everything he touches, he brings that, his iconic voice. You know, the way he delivers lines has a lot to do with his character, because if his Lockwood character, I think if the lines would have been delivered any differently, it wouldn't have landed as well. But the way Tony delivers his lines and that almost gravelly voice he has gives it that menacing, almost final feel to everything. And that's when you know shit's getting serious. You know, and it's just like, damn, that's what gets you into stuff like this. That's the shit that gives you goosebumps. You know?
Yeah, no, for sure. And look, I'm honored and proud to have, you know, have a really great relationship with him and to have become friends over the years. And he was super supportive of Stream and everything that we were doing, from Terrifier to Fuzz on the Lens. And, you know, really, really great guy that I got to know personally. And, you know, I'm honored to have him a part of Stream, the Stream legacy. You know, he's now part of the franchise forever. And that's really cool, you know, and you know, on one level you look at it, it's like, it sucks that he's not going to be around. But at the same token, there's another part of it. Imagine if we didn't cast him in this one and we were looking to do it in a future one, right? And now he's forever. So that's cool. Like, things work out. And, you know, that's awesome too. So
now there is somebody who I felt like stole the movie, and that's Wesley Holloway played Kevin Keenan. That kid was amazing, from playing like the little tech genius to, you know, his range of emotions, and to, you know, squaring up when he needs to square up, and just start to finish. This kid, watching him throughout the whole movie was phenomenal. I mean, for not even just as a kid, but as an actor, this kid killed it.
Yeah, he's a great, talented young man, and he was awesome. Him, his whole family. We met Wesley on Terrifier 2. Jason and Damien had cast him for the Serial Kid commercial, the Serial commercial kid. And we got to talk with him, and I got to see some of his reels, and I was like, wow, this kid's got some range. And again, he hadn't had a role as meaty as Kevin yet. Now he's had a few roles since then. But when we were going to the audition process, this was right after Terrifier 2, and Jason was like, Mike, he goes, let's look at Wes. He goes, I said, yeah. He says, parents are great. They're horror fans. Wes is a horror fan. Wesley's idol is Tony Todd, loves his work. So we were like, yeah, and he blew the audition away. And it was like, wow. And I'm like, there's something really special here. So it was really exciting to get to have somebody like him and to work with somebody like him that's just so fresh in the business and so excited, but like is such a professional. You know what I mean? Like we were going late some nights and he wasn't, never complained. Obviously as a kid, you can get tired, you can get kind of wishy-washy, and he brought it every time. And I'll tell you, rarely I've seen grown men and women on set fading quicker than he was. You know what I mean? And they're used to this thing. Now, I was fading quicker, and I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. I'm like, and a few times I wanted to send him. I'm like, you're done. You go to bed and rest. And he was just like, I want to see the head get chopped off. Okay, So he's a really, really great guy, and him and his family are just awesome people.
Yeah, no, like I said, he killed it. I mean, the whole cast was great, but watching him start to finish was like, I don't know. Watching kids in horror movies it could go either way. They can fall kind of flat, or in his case, I mean, he took the movie, and honestly, I hope this franchise runs for a while, because I would like to see his character come back he's 11-ish, so 8 years, in some form or another, because the way his story plays out, I think you could definitely use him at some point, or at least the character again.
Things can get interesting. And things we've discussed as well. There's so many directions this can go in, and that's what excites me. And, and I think, I have a pretty good instinct on this, and obviously with Terrifier and things like that, I think we will be able to get to do it, but I don't want to say for sure just because it's still so early and it's in its infancy stages of getting out there. But the way the responses have been thus far, it's like Terrifier 1, like anything. Like it's a slow kind of build to this thing. It's very rare that something pops nowadays. There's just so much. I mean, like right off the bat, boom. It's very rare. Like even look at Terrifier. It took 3 movies now to go what it did at the box office. And yeah, Terrifier 2, but again, that was a sequel. And with Terrifier 1, it was a slow burn. It was, we got to. It had a little bit of a following with Damien's short films, All Hallows Eve and the Terrifier and all of that. And it built a little bit of fan base. Then it goes to Terrifier 1 we did, and it builds more of a fan base, goes to Netflix, exposes more people to it. Then you do Terrifier 2, and that thing pops, and it's like, okay, but still not even to what 3 ended up doing. And, it was a really nice, trajectory, which is where Stream, I see it kind of doing the same thing.
I say once this goes to like Netflix, it's going to blow up.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So, and that's what it is, and that's what these subscription based, these Netflix, these Tubies, those kind of things. Once we go there and more exposure can get to it. But like I said, it's very promising because everybody that talks about it really enjoys it. They see what we're doing. They see where it can go. And they appreciate what we're doing. And look, we're just horror fans making movies for fellow horror fans. I say this, it sounds preachy, but it's true. We enjoy this stuff just as much as the next person. And, we love to bring this stuff to life. And there's a real genuine heart and soul that we pour into this that, excites us to make something that's good and fun and different and, feels similar at the same token.
Well, it's a formula that seems to work. I mean, you guys are having a pretty solid success with it. So I wouldn't change the formula too much. Now, I do wonder, when you guys were shooting this, who's the Jurassic Park fan?
That is Steve Delasala. He's the DP. And all we kept talking about, again, we pay homages to different horror films. And he's like, well, right, Jurassic Park is a horror movie. And just like Jaws is a horror movie, I guess. And so we were like, okay. And there was this scene in the kitchen that it's almost like if we didn't do it, it would have been a sin.
Yeah.
And it just, even the layout of that kitchen was like, it just wrote itself. And we had fun doing it. I mean, we were watching some of the shots and we're like, all right, how can we mimic this and pay tribute to it, but then also at the same token, make it our own and a little different. And so that was fun to create, and I love that everybody gets the reference.
Well, like as soon as it hit, I just started laughing. And my wife's like, what? I was like, it's the Jurassic Park scene. She's like, I know. I was like, it's just funny. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's funny. Like there was somebody in the audience that we saw the movie, and when that scene came on, they were like begging. They're like, please let this be like the Jurassic Parks. Because that's the thing. And then when they came out, they said, you're lucky. They were like, because if it wasn't, I was going to be so upset. Like that would have been a missed opportunity. So, yeah.
So let's talk kills. Not characters, but just kills. What would be your, I know what my favorite kill is. What's your favorite kill in the movie?
So, I think the most creative that I'm very proud of that I've never seen done before is the tic-tac-toe.
Yes.
That one I'm very proud of because, again, it's so hard. There's only so many things you can do to the human body that's just different at this point with X amount of years of horror films and, whatever. Action movies that it's like, how do you do something that's creative and fresh and unique? So the tic-tac-toe was something I'm really proud of that we came up with. And it's also fun. And it lays so much into the movie because it's a game and you're playing a game and, the players that ended up doing it. So that one, I love the way, so it's hard to kind of like rank them, but there's the one with the drill in the eyeball. I really love the way that ended up coming out. That's a quick one. A lot of fans, they talk about tic-tac-toe, and then they talk about the vending machine with the pliers and all of those things. They say that's the most Terrifier-esque looking kill is what I've gotten. You know what I mean? Like the way we shot it and the way we approached it and how it lingers. But I'll tell you, the kill that I know why it's not talked about because people are afraid of the spoilers with it, but I'll just say the way it is. The barbed wire, I think, is a gruesome kill.
Yeah. That's probably the most brutal.
Yeah, it's definitely hits the most. You know what I think that kill does, which I think is important? I think it shows that there's no limits in this film. I think it sets that up, that this film is fair game. It's that shift in the movie where you're like, anything can happen. The rules don't apply here. This is a kind of shock, twist, and turn are gonna happen. And I think that's the moment that you're like the first, I guess, maybe jaw drop moment, where you're like, oh shit, okay. That's kind of the sense that I've gotten from a lot of people. Like that's where the ante gets upped, and that's kind of where the film is taken into another act.
Yeah, so, that scene hit. I was like, oh, a barbed wire garrote. All right, cool. Oh, all right. Didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I know that's Damien's favorite kill for sure. And I know the person that it happened to really liked it.
No, I bet. Because what's funny is on the surface, it looks like such a simple kill. Because like just a garrote kill, you go up behind somebody, you hook them and, you basically cut into their throat with the wire. But then, you add the barbed wire element to it. And in this case, you have somebody fighting back. So it's like ripping into the flesh. And it's just like, oh, that is fucking brutal. And so, yeah, that one was intense. Great.
Yeah, that's the word for it, intense. So I think there's a lot of fun, kills sprinkled throughout. I think there's something like 26 kills in the whole film. It's a really high kill count.
Oh, yeah, and body count's high.
Yeah, and it's funny, the way we started off the movie, for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, is it. Now that we're known for this kind of thing with the Terrifier movies, it worked against us a little bit, whereas initially I think it was going to work for us. So originally when the script was written, again, this was written before my involvement with Terrifier 1. Like, this is before Terrifier 1. We wrote the script. This is like back in 2015 or 16 or something that this happened, and Terrifier was shot shortly thereafter. So originally the way the script was, it was going to be a few off-screen kills to be like, oh, and a little more, and a little more, and a little more, and then, oh, shit, you were going to go, whoa, they really went there, and it was going to be shocking that we actually, like, you know, it was a very standard kind of setup in the beginning of the horror films. A lot of them are off-screen. You see a little more. It's a simple stab, and then we go graphic, and then it takes off like a rocket ship. Now with Terrifier, we're known for that, so I'm stubborn to an extent. I didn't want to change the flow of it just because of another thing that we're doing. I wanted to keep the integrity of the storyline in place. So we kept it a certain way. But it's funny, like so many people were like, I was shocked that there was, 3, 2 off-screen kills. And they're like, wow, is this really from that? And then it was like, okay, then it hits you. But I guess maybe it did work in a sense because like they start to question, like, wait, are they really not going to show us anything? You have Damien Leone doing the effects and they're not showing us anything, so there is kind of that kind of fun that we had with it as well. And then after that, there's I think there's 2, maybe 3 that are kind of off screen or half on screen. And then after that, it's like everything is delivered.
I say that there's a couple that happen when the lights are out. The end result is beautifully executed. Just the prosthetics, all of it, just from a viewer standpoint, is gorgeous.
Thank you. And that was part of it too. It's like, okay, how do you, again, things can be so gruesome and we didn't want everybody to get kind of numb to these kills because if you do so much, then by the last one, you're just kind of numb to it. Whereas we put those in the middle of the movie to where you let your mind fill in what happened. You see the end result and it's almost like, without seeing the shark with Jaws, you just see like the aftermath there. And like your mind can say, oh, I wonder what happened. I wonder who got that kill or whatever. I mean, I think it's obvious kind of what happened and who got them, but I think it's cool that your mind is able to fill in some of those blanks and you're able just to have the shock value of, oh shit, how did that happen?
And one of the other things I really love about this movie is there's a couple side stories going, interwoven into the main story. And you have to pay attention to the movie. And if you pay attention to the movie, the reveal and, the payoffs for the stories, they're not like huge shocks, but you're like, oh, I should have seen that coming. So first watch through, missed them.
It's nice, that rewatch value, yep.
And then rewatch, I'm like, it was right there. Crap. So...
Yeah, there's a specific line, Moose, that happens in the film, and somebody, after they saw it maybe 2 or 3 times, so they went to the theaters and saw it a few times, they texted me and they says, you son of a bitch. They go, you telegraphed the whole thing right here. He goes, how did I never catch that? But it's because it's just a generic thing that people say, and so there's a few of those throughout the film that we foreshadow just a little bit, and then, it comes back. But again, you have to pay attention. This movie... And this is why some of these actors came on board. Jeffrey Combs, Danielle Harris, Dee Wallace, was although it is a slasher film, and you get the goods with that, it's a film. You know what I mean? There is a real story to it. There is there's reveals, there's things happening. I remember when Jeff Reddy goes, oh, this is a movie. There's a story to this. It's a drama too, a lot of it in the beginning. And there's a lot of dramatic stuff. So it's not just your typical kind of 90-minute run-through-the-mill slasher, everybody's getting chewed up. There's thought behind it, and that's why a lot of these actors wanted to come on board because they had a chance to act and to do something a little bit more in depth, and a little bit more detail and some more stuff to chew on with it.
Just, at the heart of it, without going into too many of the characters, you have this family at the center of all of it, just trying to bond and reconnect, and, it's a dad who's always at work, a teenager who's doing teenager shit, a kid who's always playing video games, and mom who's trying to hold it together, but there's only so much you can do when everyone's off in different directions. So this is their chance to try to come together in the, just get off the grid, disconnect from the internet, disconnect from the reality, and refocus as a family. And then hell breaks loose. And you meet the other characters along the way, and you find that they have some side stories, and that's what also makes this really interesting. And I said it earlier, it's a smart movie, and I definitely don't mean that as you make dumb movies. No, this is a very the movie in and of itself is a very smart just the way it's written, the way it's delivered, it's top tier, high level movie. I mean, there's so many layers to this movie that you're right. It's not just a slasher. It's a movie with horror tied to it.
Yeah, and and people who don't see that, which there are many, which is cool, but those who don't, they're just missing. I mean, they're just maybe not used to it. They're just kind of missing the point, and they're kind of not paying attention, I guess. You know what I mean? That don't pick up on a lot of those things, because everything is very, simple story, and I guess in the sense of family needs to reconnect, family needs to bond at the root. But this is simple, but also it's effective in the way that it affects a lot of families. Where this is a real thing. These are true characters. These are true things that happen in life. And I remember Charlie, who plays Roy, who's phenomenal. He even said, I felt like when we first read the script, like some of these dialogues are being ripped out of my house. He's like, are you on the other end listening? You know what I mean? Because very real in what happens. So a lot of these lines I've heard my parents say. And so, if people are missing that, or they're expecting, maybe they're just not expecting that high bar of, in this kind of fun movie, this kind of, where this crazy, fun, stupid stuff happens, I guess they're not expecting some of that grounded level. Like, I remember one review, it was funny. He's like, it's like a drama. And then he's like, I didn't understand. And then he goes, then it picks up. And he's like, I didn't get why it was so dramatic. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's a melodrama in the beginning, because that's what lures you into our characters. That's what gets to know them. And I think that's also how certain things in the end pay off. And that was very intentional.
Absolutely. And one thing I've always, the way I've always critiqued a horror movie, whether, good, bad, however as far as like rewatchability goes, it's how invested am I in either the character or the killer? And in this case, the character development, you're invested in these characters, whether you want them to die or you want them to live. And yes, there are a couple that, you want to see get off. But there are others where, you hope that their story plays out and you want to see them succeed and, get the victory. And that's what makes the experience that much more compelling, more personal. Because you're connected to something. You're not just, I'm watching a movie. You feel like there's actual stakes involved, and you guys executed it flawlessly.
Thank you. That means a lot. We worked very hard on it. And like I said, we're taking a lot of things that everyone's saying that they loved about Stream, and trying to put it into motion when we, do future installments, for sure. So it means a lot. And it means a lot that you enjoyed the film. You work hard on something, you put it out there. We talked about this. You don't know how people are going to take it. And it's really awesome that majority of the people, most people, are really, really liking it, and it's finding its audience. And there's shirts out we got done from Terror Threads. There's the mask. Like, people are wearing merch at cons that we go to. Like, we were just at the Monster Mania, and somebody, it was true. I was there. I saw it. They were like, it was like Stream Takeover. They're like, everybody was in Stream stuff, and they were. I would not believe it if I heard that podcast and I'd not been there myself to witness it. It was so surreal and so cool and so crazy that, like, these characters, these movie, the story, people are resonating to, and it's really humbling.
Well, and this is where it's fun for me, because this is now I think your third year on. So we do this about yearly. Now, I remember our conversation, most of our conversation from last year, and we were talking about early stages of Stream, and you've mentioned putting the concept out there a couple times now. I remember you saying then that this was such like an abstract concept that you weren't sure how it was going to land. Here we are a year later, and it's everywhere. I mean, this is why one of the reasons I really like doing essentially our yearly interview at this point, because you always seem to leave me with something, and then I get to follow up on it the next year. But the teases from the year prior, you get the payoff later. And just watching essentially your uncertainty last year of, because you were just as excited then as you are now. But, and rightfully so, you were uncertain. This is new concept. This is, on the surface, it sounds like a very abstract, obscure concept. Are people going to latch onto this? Are people going to watch it? and you weren't sure how it was going to take off, where it was going to go. And now to see your work pay off and to see the reactions to that makes me feel good for you, because you've now been validated, and that makes me happy.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. And yeah, you're exactly right. You never know. And it's really cool to see it working out. And it's really cool to see people caring about it. There are theories. There's like a group on Facebook called the Stream Team. It's like this group that fans made. I'm a part of it because it's cool to interact, just like I'm a part of the Art the Clown Appreciation Society on Facebook. And it's growing every day. There are people sharing their cosplay. They're sharing their merch. They're sharing their excitement for the movie. They're sharing their theories. They also were mourning over Tony and discussing where they think it's going to go. And it's just, as a creator, it's just such an honor to see that happen and to be a part of it. It's so humbling and so you don't get that often. You don't get that, and it's just really, really cool to be a part of. And at the same token, it's nice to be able to interact with people who care and support. And I'm just blessed to do so. And it's the only word I can say about it.
Definitely look forward to more of Stream. So I guess we'll set this up for the next one. What can you tell us about Screamboat?
Yeah, so Screamboat is, like I mentioned, is a little bit different. It's more of a comedy horror in a way. Obviously, it's got its horror, but it's a little bit more of a satire. It's a little more lighthearted. It's a little bit more like wink, wink at the camera and wink at the audience. It's still a fun movie. I like to be a part of fun movies. Terrifier's a fun movie. Steamboat Willie, Screamboat will be the same. Normal Attraction. They're all unique in their own ways and different kinds of fun. But David Howard Thornton plays Willie, and there's some really cool moments in the film that I think people are going to enjoy. I have a small cameo. I don't even think that's out there yet, so oops. Whatever. There you go. Breaking news. But yeah, we shot the whole thing on a ferry in Staten Island, and it's very New York based. It's very true New York based. That only real New Yorkers would be able to bring that authenticity to it. But again, we kind of poke fun at ourselves. We poke fun at Disney a lot. At the concept. It's cool. It's really cool. It's different. And again, I stress that because a lot of people think it's going to be like Blood and Honey or even Terrifier, where it's like, real deal horror trying to scare you. It's not. It does have its horror moments, but it's way more of a satire than anything else. And it's meant to be laughed at. It's meant to be, oh my God, this is absurd. Because a killer mouse or a killer rat on a boat that's yay high is like, it's just absurdity. It's ridiculous.
I love it.
We really lean into that. It's like very tongue in cheek. David brings it. He's actually the most different he's been from any of the characters that he's played. For
so he
sure.
gets to talk.
I didn't say that. Didn't say that, but we'll see. Yeah, it's going to be a cool one, and that comes to theaters. I think January 30th. It's in January of this year. And of next year, sorry. And so that's going to be exciting. And I can't wait to see what people think about that one. It's just another one that we shot it fast. So we shot Terrifier 3 from January to April. Then Damien went off and was doing all the post on it. And then we, the production crew, literally from Terrifier 3, then went and worked on Screamboat. And we shot that entire movie in 1 month.
Jeez.
Insane. And all while Terrifier's in post, Stream is finishing up post and getting ready for its limited theatrical run. And then Screamboat's being shot. And so to say 2024 was a blur, especially, up until the summer, is an understatement. It was wild.
It's crazy.
Yep.
Can't wait.
So next time we'll come back and talk about Screamboat.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully Stream 2. That would be nice. At least if we
at
get.
Least to announce it, if nothing else, yeah.
So that would be cool.
So where can listeners keep up to date with everything Fuzz on the Lens has coming out?
Yeah, the best place is Fuzz on the Lens. We're on all social media at Fuzz on the Lens, whether it's Instagram, YouTube, X, Facebook. Those are really the main spots. You could find me, Michael Leavy, or at Leave This Island on Instagram. We try to share different things on different platforms, so it's not like if you just follow, if you follow one, you're going to miss what's on the other stuff. So we try to, other than the major stuff, in major announcements, we try to keep it different. And again, if you haven't seen it, please check out Stream. It's on Fandango at home, which is formerly Vudu, and iTunes and Apple TV, which I heard those three are the best payouts for the filmmakers. I found that out as far as percentages go. And then obviously Amazon, whereas because Amazon is Amazon, they can kind of take more of the profits because everyone has Amazon. Those are the main spots. We're growing, we're going to be adding some more soon. But those are where you can get it now. It is for sale or for rent currently. We also just announced the VHS. We're doing a VHS collector's edition run of Stream. It's got some great, unique, exclusive cover art to it, which is awesome. Very retro looking. So excited about that. And eventually, the Blu-rays and the DVDs and stuff will all come out. We're going to try to include some special features on them as we go, as it up. So this way you'll get more and more insight into the Stream world.
That's awesome. Listeners, I will put those links in the episode description. You can find me and other great podcasters over at the electronicmediacollective.com. Be sure to follow me on Facebook at Moose's Monster Mash and on YouTube at Moose Media Inc. Michael, as always, this has been fun. I'm so glad we got to dive into Stream.
Me too, man. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for watching it. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. That means a lot, and we're going to keep working hard for you guys and keep working hard to deliver the best content and entertainment we can.
Yep, can't wait for you to come back. And listeners, come back tomorrow for another installment of the 13 Horrifying Days of Christmas. And until next time, Horror Hounds, mash on.
This has been Moose's Monster Mash. Come back for more chills and thrills if you dare.